Members, good morning. This is the seventh special meeting of the FC, and the meeting will run from 9 a.m. to 12:40 p.m., divided into two sessions. The purpose of a special FC meeting is to examine the 2015-16 draft estimates of the administration to ensure that the funding sought will not exceed the necessary. We'd like to see what is necessary for implementing the relevant policies. Depending on the number of members who would like to speak, I will set a speaking time for each of you. When members would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. May I remind members that all questions must be directly related to our draft estimates. And if members would like to follow up on written replies by the administration, please quote the reply serial number on the top right-hand corner of the page, such as FHB FE001. If we don't have enough time, members may ask written supplementary questions or follow up at the relevant panel. Let us welcome the Secretary for Food and Health and his team. This session is on food safety and environmental hygiene. Regarding health, we'll wait until the next session. And this session is for food safety and environmental hygiene. I suggest that each member can have up to 4 minutes. So, Secretary, can you please highlight your speaking notes to us? Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. The Food and Health Bureau, in this year's estimates, about $6.5 billion have been earmarked, representing an increase of about $150 million, or 2.3% over the previous year, and accounting for 2% of recurring government expenditure. New resources available in this financial year are mainly used to provide a one-off allocation of about $39 million for the FEHD to cope with the rise in outsourcing contract price, additional funding of about $12 million for the department to strengthen enforcement action and regulatory measures against illegal shopfront extensions. One-off allocation about $4 million for the department to enhance pest control services in response to cases of dengue fever, and additional funding of about $3 million for FHB to provide secretariat support and legal advisory service for the Fishermen Claims Appeal Board. I will now proceed to outline the policy priorities and work progress. New agricultural policy. The government published a public consultation document in late 2014 inviting public views on a new agricultural policy. Supportive measures proposed in the document include exploring the feasibility of establishing an agricultural park and the establishment of a sustainable agricultural development fund. Over the past 3 months, extensive consultation with various sectors were conducted. The community in general supported the new agricultural policy. Regarding the new agricultural policy, the consultation period ended on the 31st of March, and the government will carefully consolidate the views received and draw up a detailed proposal and an implementation timetable. Since the occurrence of H7N9 avian influenza cases in the mainland, Hong Kong has been on high alert and taking measures to prevent the spread of the virus. Since April 2013, we had one after the other introduced the H7AI PCR test and then the serological test. Last year, Hong Kong detected H7AI virus in imported live poultry in January and December. The two cases demonstrate that our existing system has achieved its purpose, and we will strengthen the preventive and surveillance measures when necessary. Contact with infected live poultry is the main source of risk insofar as human infection by AI is concerned. Although the system for surveillance and control we have built up over the years is by and large effective, no surveillance system can claim zero risk, so we will hope to complete the consultancy study and seek public views on our way forward. The government always attached great importance to ensuring food safety. A public consultation on regulation of nutrition and health claims on formula products and prepackaged foods for infants and young children under the age of 36 months was launched in January. It will end in April. After completing the collation of views collected during the consultation period, we aim to put forward the depths of the legislative proposals in 2015. As a result of the Taiwan substandard lot incident last September, the public expressed deep concern about the safety of edible oil. We have decided to step up the regulation of the safety of edible oil and recycling of waste cooking oil in Hong Kong, and we will consult the public on the proposals in the first half of this year. As regards the regulation of cooked meat, we will currently reviewing the relevant legislation and will consult the public on this issue. This year, the government also proposes to expand the food safety laboratory in Pok Fu Lam for enhancing effective delivery of testing work to protect food safety. We are undergoing a district consultation on this proposal. Secretary, in fact, we've already got your speaking note. You can please be brief. I'll be very quick. High salt and sugar content may cause harm to human health in the long term, and WHO is gradually proposing policies to do that. So we have just set up a committee on reduction of salt and sugar in food to formulate policies for Hong Kong. For public markets and hawkers, the panel has set up 2 subcommittees respectively to follow on these 2 things. The administration has commissioned a consultancy study. We've earlier briefed the relevant subcommittee on the major findings of the consultancy study, and we're now waiting for the final report from the consultant. As for hawkers, the relevant committee has suggested that we should formulate our hawker policy from a development rather than a management and control perspective. So we've just briefed the chairman and vice chairman of the 18 district councils on some important proposals. We hope to formulate a hawker policy which can strike an optimal balance among the different views of various stakeholders so that licensed hawking business can thrive while unreasonable nuisance to the local community can be avoided. We'll work very closely with 2 subcommittees on enhancing the viability of public markets and also the operation of hawkers. Last month, a colleague of FHD sadly passed away while on duty. We are so saddened by that. For frontline enforcement work, the department has provided guidelines and training to its staff to ensure the personal safety of our officers while on duty. We are now reviewing our safety arrangements, hoping to make improvements. We will continue to foster the necessary change in mindset in promoting green burial. We will have a new round of publicity work. As for district-based columbarium development, we have obtained the support of relevant district councils for the development of columbarium on 7 potential sites involving over 450,000 new niches. If we can secure LegCo's funding, then the new niches can come on stream gradually in 2018 and 2019. On regulating private columbaria, we introduced the private columbaria bill to the Council in June last year. We will work closely with the Bills Committee for early implementation of the licensing scheme. Animal welfare. We're now drafting a bill hoping to introduce it to LegCo this year. And in Yuen Long and Changchao, we have a trap neuter trial program. It started in January, and we will follow up on the effectiveness of the scheme. Chairman, I myself and colleagues are happy to answer questions from members.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Now, 8 members have indicated their intention to speak 4 minutes each. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. Thank you, Chairman. With regard to the opening remarks by the Secretary, may I refer to Paras 17 to 19. Secretary, you head the FH Bureau. And you now have new thinking about the hawker policy. You say you will do it from a development rather than a management and control perspective. I think this is already very modest in a way, because you used to say it is management and also phasing out. No matter what, I think your new thinking has responded to the aspirations of the grassroots. I think you have done a good job, and I'd like to compliment you for doing that. On para 19, Mr. Wu Kong Sum lost his life, unfortunately, during his duties. And I was there at the funeral, and frontline officers were very much saddened. I hope there will be a review soon. Here, Mr. Secretary, you say you will review the relevant arrangements. My question is, when will you have the review results? Second question. I'm concerned about private columbaria. The Legislative Council is now studying the relevant regulatory bill. But owners of industrial buildings and private listed companies are making use of this window period before the bill is passed. In Taiwan, there is the carry warehouse, which is proposed to be converted into 120,000 niches. Livelihood of the people there will be affected. There is a lot of objection, and the Town Planning Board has already received 8,000 to 9,000 objections. My question is, you are asking consumers not to make any rash purchase decision, but shouldn't you also register your stance that the FH Bureau should oppose to private developers and listed companies making use of this window period to make use of the opportunity to reap the biggest profits for listed companies and private developers? If the carry warehouse can be turned into a private columbarium, huge profits can be reaped by selling $120,000, so they will gain $12 billion. Secretary, I'm also very concerned that while we are in the process of scrutinizing the bill and before the bill is enacted, there is a still development of private columbaria. I'm very concerned about this. We must remind such proponents that they must understand that once the law comes into effect, private columbaria will have to comply with the law. We're also very concerned that if there is any large-scale columbaria plan, including government columbaria plan, the public are most concerned about the possible traffic that will be generated. If there is going to be a large number of niches that are to be provided, then the proponents must prove to the Town Planning Board and residents in the vicinity that they have done a proper traffic impact assessment. So I'm very concerned. Next one, Kenneth Chan. I think the prompter is not working. Dr. Helena Wong. Chairman, we are all very concerned about food safety. The Secretary says the government is as concerned. The mainland and Taiwan, which are our neighboring places, we can see there are a lot of incidents of food safety in those places. The mainland has said that this is one main policy they should tackle. Hong Kong is a free port. We don't produce a lot of the food we consume. we are going to develop agriculture, but then in the end we still need to import a lot of our food. The present mechanism is that we have food safety laws, and after the Fukushima nuclear incident in Japan, we have banned the import of certain food from the 5 prefectures in Japan. How does this mechanism work? If we know there is a problem, we'll ban the import, but how do we do the ban itself? And in terms of customs clearance, we don't actually require the declaration to be done before the goods are imported in Hong Kong. And in fact, after food is imported into Hong Kong, there are still 14 days for them to do the customs declaration. And within that 14-day period, carrots from Japan, which may be problematic, would have been sold. How did the carrots in question come into Hong Kong? It's a matter of customs declaration. Were the carrots flown to Hong Kong or brought in by sea? If it is by sea, how can the Kwai Chung container port understand or know what is being imported into Hong Kong from Japan? And also, in terms of customs declaration, they are only required to put down the name of the country without the names of prefectures, etc. So how can you ban food from the 5 prefectures in Japan? Secretary, as Dr. Wong said, it's true that in terms of trade, Hong Kong is a free port. This is good for our trade. But for the implementation of food safety control, we have to act according to our risk assessment. And if we are to implement a ban or an examination of the food, we still have to strengthen that mechanism. We have started to discuss with the Customs and Excise to see how we can further step up our examination of import after the risk is assessed. Because sometimes we have to do comprehensive examination of the food that may be problematic. Maybe the Customs and Excise and the FEHD can supplement. So is it the Commissioner or Dr. Tam? Chairman, maybe I can add. Dr. Wong, you are correct. According to the law, the import and export control does allow a 14-day period after import is done. We understand the importance of food safety. Therefore, we have some arrangement with the FEHD. Air freight is subject to 100% voluntary declaration, and most of the sea freight is subject to the same system. And we also give samples to the FEHD for examination. So even if there is not such a law, in actual implementation, we have got such arrangements. Dr. Tam, on the case of the carrots, I can supply 2 pieces of information for members' better understanding. Number 1, in that circumstance, we had 2 matters that were not foreseen by us. Number 1, the declaration was made in such a way that the address given was wrong. Our colleagues wanted to go and search the premises, but we went to the wrong place because of the wrong declaration. And secondly, when the ordering was done, in fact, no food from those 5 prefectures was ordered. It is just that the exporter in Japan saw some vacant space in the container, and so, in fact, it was like a gift. And usually, when there are such unforeseen incidents, they are the result of a series of matters. But no matter what, because of the notification system, we were able to intercept that batch of carrots. Dr. K.K. Kwok? Chairman, 2 questions. Number 1 about the columbaria. Last year, the Ombudsman pointed out that actually 24,000 niches have been left vacant for 2 years. It is said that in 2018, 2019, there will be another 180,000 niches that would be supplied. If the government does not do its job administratively, say you should have a waiting list, and also you should allow people who have waited very long to get a niche. Now, if you don't do that, you are not being responsible. And also, the scattering of human ashes in gardens of remembrance or at sea, I think those are very good ways to deal with the problem, but it seems you are not doing enough. I can't say you have not done anything, but I don't think you have done enough publicity so people know about it and are attracted to use the services. I hope you will do much more about this in the coming year. Next, I'd like to talk about market vacancy rates in Chin King Circuit and also the one in Kwai Chung. Also, the one in Baring Street in Hong Kong. You understand that the vacancy rate is like 75% to 88%, but you have not done anything to fill those markets. Hong Kong has scarce resources in terms of land. On the one hand, we are talking about introducing more local activities, economy, so small operators can also have a place to do their business. Can you apply new thinking to this and not just follow your traditional ways? If the figures continue like that, I don't think we can see any improvement even next year. First of all, Chairman, the columbaria, green burial. We will continue to do more to promote and publicize it. We are actually going to launch another education program. And on the other hand, some people have said that the present arrangement of scattering human ashes at sea may not be very desirable, and we are going to think about ways and means to improve it so as to convenience people who would like to use the service. As for market vacancies, you understand that recently we have done a consultancy report on this, and also we have just introduced the hawker policy to the panel, and we mentioned that we would continue converting markets or parts of markets with high vacancy rates. We are considering the issue now. Sorry, Chairman, I don't have too much time. Can I please ask you whether you are going to have a reserve list and how you will make use of the vacant niches as much as possible? Can I ask the Director of FEH to deal with the question? Director, with regard to public niches and their allocation, we do it by computer random balloting. We understand the Ombudsman said in one of his reports last year that later on, if we are going to allocation, we can make use of other ways and means. We are going to consider that. At present, we are still selling niches in Kyoto Road of Wahab Shack. We know that there are people on the list who may not come forward to choose a niche because of different reasons. By summer this year, all the listed or registered names in our list, we believe most of them would be able to be allocated with a niche.
Yeah. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on food safety because I have received a lot of complaints from the general public. They are very concerned. There is little they can do, and they could only rely on the government as the gatekeeper. And just now, Dr. Helena Wong asked a question, but according to the reply from the government, it seems that the whole framework and the whole structure is very lax at the moment. And the commissioner also said that
it's because of the space available in the container. Well, my question is that we need to amend the legislation, but of course that takes time. Well, Commissioner, in terms of food safety, you have to do your gatekeeping job. Do you intend to amend the legislation? Well, because in Taiwan, every week we see food incidents, and the situation in Taiwan is nowadays very similar to that in the mainland. So do tell us, Secretary, because the public is very concerned. Secretary. Well, Chairman, we regularly review our legislation on food safety. And we're talking about two things. One is the standards of food safety. And we have this direction in mind. That is, gradually, we're going to raise the food safety standards to bring it in a gradual manner on a par with international standards. But please speed up, Under Secretary. Yes, in terms of enforcement, we take a risk-based approach. Food with higher risks would be subject to more stringent regulations. For example, for edible oil, as we mentioned just now, our policy direction is that we are going to require a safety certificate from the country of origin before they're allowed to be imported. So we are, in a gradual manner, improving our legislation. Under Secretary, this is really problematic. How many years are we talking about? If you say that you will do it gradually, do we have to wait for universal suffrage first? Because this will be consumed by the public. We're not just talking about edible oil, a lot of other foods as well. Well, let me give you some examples, because we cannot take a broad brush approach as far as different kinds of foods are concerned. We must take a risk-based approach. And I just quoted one example. In fact, for edible oil, we're going to conduct a public consultation, following which there will be a legislative process. Now, in Taiwan, some foods, problematic foods have been identified, so there will be an import ban. Is that right? If you're talking about an outbreak or an incident, then we do have a mechanism. So what does that mean? The goods will be taken off the shelf? Perhaps we'll invite the Commissioner to say something. Thank you. Chairman, thank you, Ms. Lau. Well, as far as food safety is concerned, the starting point is that the management or control system should be one based on scientific evidence and based on risks. And food safety cannot be ensured simply by random sampling. There must be control. So, according to WHO and the OI and the FAO, we need a tripartite cooperation, and we, in particular, need the cooperation from the business sector. Now, Ms. Lau, you mentioned that the general public is quite passive in this matter. That is true, but we also hope that by cooperating with the government, they could become smart consumers so that they could make informed choices. But how could they be informed? Well, wait for your next round, Ms. Lau. Dr. Kenneth Chan. I'd like to follow up on para 17 of the Secretary's speaking notes on hawker policy. I'm also a member of the subcommittee on matters related to hawker policy. So I welcome this setting of policy direction after some brainstorming. And in a public hearing, we will be receiving deputations and seeking views from different stakeholders.
this is a challenging policy area. You need to strike a balance between thrive development on the one hand and ensuring fire safety, food safety, and avoidance of public nuisance, etc. So after striking a balance between these matters, you need to come up with a feasible policy. But since Secretary, you have undertaken this duty to formulate policy in this matter, then as members we should support you. Well, coming back to the reply numbers 153 and 162, now we're concerned about the 43 fixed hawker pitches areas. We'd like to know some progress because we have approved the funds, and after the blaze in Fa Yun Street, we need to encourage these hawkers and cater for the needs of different stakeholders, as you put it in paragraph 17. However, as far as participation is concerned, apart from Lei Yun East and Lei Yun West, where you have 100% participation rate, and I'm looking at number 153, it seems that for other areas the participation rate is quite low. Now, Secretary, I don't mean to push you to boost it to 100% for all areas within this financial year. I just want to point out that there are different perspectives and interests involved. So if you give too much pressure on hawkers and hawker assistants in different hawker areas, there could be a repercussion. Now, I hope that whilst ensuring fire safety, you can gradually make some progress with different hawker areas. We're not talking about a deadline for 100% participation or take-up rate, because I'm also quite concerned about the hawker policy, because this might send a contrary message to hawkers that they should either surrender their licenses or to move to other places. So, Secretary, what idea do you have to increase the take-up rate? Secretary, as Dr. Chan put it, of course, on the one hand, there are several aspects as far as the program is concerned. Fire safety is one, and of course we are going to give priority to that. As for the other aspect, voluntary surrendering of licenses, we hope that through this measure or arrangement, some hawker pitches can become vacated as a result of improvement in fire safety, and as a result, refurbishment would be carried out, and more fire-resistant materials will be used. And we are being quite lax, as Dr. Chen put it. We have quite a lax time frame because we don't want to exert pressure on anyone. Instead, we encourage participation. Through discussing with their representatives, we try to come up with a proposal agreed by all, because this is more effective. So for some areas, originally they were assessed to be very challenging, but with the help of district councillors, we were able to make some progress. And I think if necessary, the director can supplement. Now, I think the majority of hawkers were involved in refurbishment, but this part is not the most important part. Mr. Leung Kwok-ho. Well, I just want to ask a question. Well, just now, Secretary mentioned crematorium and columbaria, and he said that something should be done. Well, Secretary, you are a medical doctor by profession, and for expectant mothers, you need to plan for hospital beds. And, well, in the end, now we have 0 delivery quota for type 2 babies. Well, anyway, for the deceased, the ashes are sometimes just stored at home because of lack of niches. And what is your policy when there are insufficient niches? Will you be discussing with the Development Bureau, which should try to come up with sites for niches to be stored? Well, Secretary, you understand this. Even for the deceased, we need a place for them, for the burial. And for Hong Kong, the situation is really bleak, because even after one dies, one cannot find a place to store the ashes. And coming back to the question 018, 11 prosecutions were taken out against illegal columbaria, with the highest level fine imposed, that is $8,000, and the issuance of warning letters. It's really profitable, and the operators are only fined $8,000. Well, it's just like hawkers. They'd rather pay a fine of a couple of $100s and continue their business in the areas. Now, the first question is, are you going to step up your enforcement effort to tackle the problem? Secondly, now have you, well, of course this is up to the Secretary for Development to think about it, but have you approached Mrs. Carrie Lam? There should be niches for the deceased, because Mrs. Carrie Lam once said that industrial buildings should be revitalized to tackle the problem of subdivided flats. Now, for this problem, have you thought about seeking help from the Secretary for Development, because enforcement is not effective? Only $8,000 fined in one of the cases, and this problem remains. Well, I'll leave after asking this question. Secretary, under the existing legal framework, there isn't a piece of legislation regulating private columbaria. Therefore, different policy bureaus and departments could only take enforcement action against breaches according to the applicable rules and regulations, and this is not desirable. That is why we're proposing a new piece of legislation to regulate comprehensively private columbaria. And this bill is now being scrutinized by a Bills Committee in this Council. We hope that the bill can be passed as soon as possible so that we can step up our effort in enforcement.
Ms. Alison Mack, perhaps next time. I won't come back. Ms. Alice Mack, my question is related to markets. Reply 147. The reply sets out the number of public markets in different districts. Some have more, some less. For instance, Cycle only 2, Cycle Market and Doi Min Hoi Market. But Cycle District should cover Zhang Guanlou Islands. There are many in Mui Wo, Chang Chau, and Peng Chau on the islands. But what about Tongchong? It's a new town. It has got no market. So in the Eastern District and Kwun Tong District, there are 11 and 8 respectively, but there isn't any in new markets. In 2009, a new planning standard was adopted. As a result, new towns, in particular, are not provided with public markets. How can we address the needs of the local residents? They need to shop for daily necessities. There is a subcommittee in the council. We passed a motion requiring public markets to be provided or to be built in new towns, including Tongchong and Tinshui. And reply 156 it said that for some markets with low utilization rate, they may be closed next year, but the reply is silent on markets that may be closed. So what are they, and when will you announce when they will be closed? Because they would affect the distribution of markets in all 18 districts. As set out in reply number 147. It's true that different districts have reflected to us that some new towns would like to have new public markets. I believe it is because a few new towns had a different town planning design than old ones. They do not have on-street shops, and many residential developments are rather self-contained. But in existing markets, there are some with high vacancy rate and not so viable. So in considering whether new towns or whether each town should be provided with a public market, we have a number of factors to consider: the needs of the local residents and other choices available. On top of this, we have to consider how management of public markets can ensure proper operation of public markets and that they can achieve the regional purpose. So we're still thinking about this. For the time being, we don't have any new plan to build a new public market in any district. But as members may note, we commissioned a consultancy, although the scope of study is existing markets. But when we consider the success as well as failure factors of existing markets, will be helpful in ensuring viability of new markets. The findings will be of value. What about the vacancy rates or the vacant markets? Yes, many members have given us examples of a few markets. Indeed, we are reviewing these markets. This is related to our hawker policy as well, because one of our hawker policies is the proposal to transform public markets with relatively higher vacancy rate. So when we have more concrete ideas, we'll go back to the relevant panel. Mr. Chung Kwok Pan, I'd like to ask the Secretary about our new agricultural policy. Of course, any new industries to be developed by the administration is worthy of support. However, last Saturday, I watched a TV program where the Secretary appeared, and he talked about the future viability of agriculture in Hong Kong. And I saw many young farmers on the TV program, and the greatest challenge is the lack of land. We don't have land earmarked for farming, and some of them are for residential development, and some landlords would rather keep the land fallow than rent it out for farming. So the total production of our farming industry dropped from $500 million to $200 million recently. Secretary, yes, the first and foremost question to ask is, should we develop agriculture in Hong Kong? Our agriculture industry is not responsible for a large proportion of our consumption. We know that it is a declining industry. Still, in a highly urbanized area, there should be a diversity of industries, and the community have a demand for safe and high-quality fruit produces. Some farmers have aspirations, and their greatest challenges, or among one of the greatest challenges, is land policy. Our first proposal is to establish an agricultural park. This is an entirely new initiative. Although we have always had the power, we've never exercised it, and that is to resume land for farming use. Now, the consultation period is over. We have to collate views received. I think the majority of views received are in support of this proposal. Of course, there are comments that Hong Kong is too short of land, and also what about the marketing and sales of the products. But in general, the responses were supportive. So the next step for us is to collate the views received, and the government will resume land and provide the infrastructure for renting out to farmers. There will be guaranteed tenancy of term of tenancy, because currently farmers have no guarantee as to land use, and there are also risks involved with infrastructure investment. Another question which I cannot answer now is, how far can we satisfy the requirements of our local farmers? Of course, one agricultural park is not sufficient, but I hope it can be a model scheme. If farm landowners are quite sure that there is no potential development for the land they own, they would consider using our approach so that land can be made available for farming. The Secretary talked about resuming land, but according to the report or the TV program I watched last week, most of the land was being owned by the government. Secretary, I think it is better for the director of AFC to answer. My impression is that much of our farmland is being held by private landowners. Director, we're about 4,523 hectares suitable of land suitable for farming, but only 729 hectares are in active farming, and we have earmarked or got 3,000 odd hectares in our OZP. However, land use is related to demand, and demand is related to rent. The problem is the economic value of agricultural land is low, and therefore land owners are not so willing to lease their land to farmers. It may be difficult for them to recover their land afterwards. So our priority is to enhance the economic value of our farm products so that they can afford farmland. There aren't too much vacant farmland owned by the government. Either it is not suitable for farming or is being used for other industry. Now we talk about private farmland. They were used for farming for hundreds of years, but for certain reasons it's been left fallow for a few decades. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I'm on food safety. On page 227 of the draft estimates, well, is about food safety. The increase in provision is 1.6%. And as the establishment is 11,168, there will be 3 extra officers added to 11,171. Perhaps food safety isn't receiving a lot of extra resources, but it's because the government is very confident with the state of food safety in Hong Kong. However, the public are quite worried. Just last night or the night before, we had reports that the pepper from Taiwan was problematic, and some of the problematic food might have found its way to Hong Kong. And in 2015-16, areas of concern. All right, you talk about waste oil, but what about food from Taiwan? We have a lot of imported food from Taiwan. Have you keep an eye on such food products? I think matters of concern to the public are not your concerns. You have not added a lot of resources or manpower. All right, Ms. Emily Lau asked you about legislation, and you said you would adopt a step-by-step approach, and there will be a full review of CAP 132, public health and safety ordinance, and all the relevant penalties related to food safety. Perhaps you don't even know what's written in your draft estimates, or you don't know what you're doing. However, there is a big gap between public expectation and what you're doing. The public are rather unhappy with the state of food safety, but you have not added any manpower in your draft estimates, and in your areas of concern or areas requiring special attention, you have not included these issues. In the Food and Health Bureau, I devote a lot of time and efforts to food safety. Well, we have a few perspectives. First, through regulation, and second, food surveillance. We have a rather sound food surveillance program, taking over 60,000 samples per year for testing. And we also have a mechanism to deal with food safety incidents. Whether we are talking about neighboring cities or international cities, well, there are always plenty of food safety incidents, and therefore we must improve our own legislation. Mr. Xin talked about penalties. Yes, we must review our penalties, because now my time is short. I must interrupt you. Taking of food samples for testing. In 2013, you took 64,387 samples. In 2014, 64,219. There's fewer cases. In 2015, you expect to take 65,000 samples. So we are concerned that you are not increasing the number of samples you take for testing. Is it that you don't have the power or the capacity to do it? It's just that you don't have the will to do it? Well, 65,000 odd samples per year, I think this is already a rather high proportion considering our population. When there are matters of concern, we will take more samples. We'll increase the number of samples to areas where we believe are more risky and concerns.
Next one, Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to refer to question 039. At the end of 39, we have at the end of 2013, we have got a ban on trawling, but fishermen also think that there will be an opportunity for development near shore. However, there is illegal trawling, which is affecting their livelihood by way of a near shore fishing, they would put down their fishing gear and then they would leave and then they come back to get the fish catch. But then very often the fishing gear is stolen. Now you have got 18 more persons in order to tackle illegal trawling. I'd like to ask you, after increasing resources, in 2014 there were only 10 cases of prosecution. How do you interpret that figure? Because to our fishermen, the situation is serious. Why is it there are only 10 cases of prosecution? We think that is unreasonable. Secretary, from what I know, the AFCD has taken targeted effort in order to work with other law enforcement agencies to take a very effective enforcement action. I'd like to ask the Director to give you more details. Director. Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Ho, for your question. First, the theft of fishing gear from near shore is a theft case. It's just like burglary, and it must be handled by the police. As for Marine Patrol, in the past year, we have done over 1,300 Marine Patrol exercises, but we don't only use the 3 launches that are rented. We ourselves have 2 launches, and then we have over 10 launches that also examine the shoreline at marine parks. So there are a dozen or so launches, and the 10 cases represent successful conviction. The highest fine was $8,500, and then there is another case where the person was imprisoned for 2 months, and 4 cases are still being processed. We like to receive intelligence from fishermen so we can do more. We are working together with the Marine Police and also the Fisheries Administration of the mainland. We always mount joint actions with them. We have seen illegal trawling done by mainland vessels. Even yesterday, I was asking my colleagues about the situation in the last 3 months. We have heard from fishermen that actually the situation is now more under control. But illegal trawling has taken place for 2 years, and we must allow fishermen to understand that we will certainly strictly apply the law. Mr. Ho, I'd like to follow up. I'd like to ask for a figure. In 2014, how many telephone calls have you received about illegal trawling? And how many joint actions have you taken with the mainland? And number 3, I have heard fishermen say they saw illegal trawling and then they called you up, but then nobody was caught. How many such cases were there? Director, I can't really answer the first question because you are talking about calls to the police. Maybe afterwards we can give you the answer. Yes, maybe you can supplement it in writing. Secondly, about cooperation with the mainland. Well, it involves the governments of 2 places, and we can't do it every month. We have to do a lot of coordination first. We'd like to do more. Number 3, very often reports will be made to us and the police, and we will do our best. But as to whether we can arrest anybody, it's about detection. We, of course, would like to achieve a higher success rate, but then we have to have the cooperation of many parties. Mr. Tenkapiu, thank you. When the Secretary answered Ms. Alice Mack, he said there would not be any plans to build public markets. I'm very disappointed. I'm aware of the question asked by Ms. Alice Mack. That's 147. In fact, 101 public markets, and out of those, only 8 have a vacancy rate of less than 80%. In other words, most of them are popular, most of them can serve the public, and also small businesses can rent the places in public markets. Now, as to whether there are improvement measures, I think the consultancy report has commented on it. But overall speaking, the community welcomes such a facility. So what are you afraid of? Why are you not building more public markets? Are you worried about objection from Link REIT? Are you worried? You don't have the competency But we can see now that the vacancy rate is actually very low. Most of the markets have an occupancy rate of over 80%, save for 8 markets. So what are your worries, Secretary? Why are you not building more public markets? Especially, this is so unfair to residents in 4 new towns, Tung Chung, Ma On Shan, Tin Shui Wai, and Tseung Kwan O. Secretary, Chairman, as I mentioned, it is not that we have any worries. But if we are going to make use of public money to build public facilities, we are duty-bound to ensure that the facilities are, first of all, required. Secondly, that they can achieve what they should achieve and operate successfully. I say we don't have plans now to build more public markets. That is true, but we also have to review the operation of all public markets. We need to have that report first. And then we can take another look. If there is a new mode of operation for markets, be it hardware or software, which is under consideration, if we can ensure that there will be effective operation, then we can look at the needs of the different districts. Secretary, would that be too slow? I won't object that you bring in improvements first, and then you say you would take another review, and then you would wait a few years to see whether there will be any need for a public market, just like in Chin King Circuit in Chin Wan. Do you want 100% occupancy rate first? Tung Chung residents won't go to Chin Wan to buy fresh produce, and Tseung Kwan O residents won't go to the 2 markets in Sai Kung to buy fresh produce. The thing is, these new communities have to pay very high for their produce. I like to tell you that in Yat Tong Estate, the best profits can be reaped from selling pork. But then all the 4 stalls selling pork belong to the same owner, even if they operate under different names. So would that be related to link REIT? That may be linear monopoly. So there is no choice for the residents at all. And you have already confirmed that. Well, I won't comment whether there is indeed monopoly. Well, that is in a letter from the FEHD to me. Well, I think I need to verify this first, because this is governed by another piece of legislation. This is about competition. But then there is one point. Is it that all FEHD markets can provide produce at a cheaper price compared to other markets? Well, we don't have sufficient evidence to prove that, because the survey results don't go to show that indeed that is the case. Well, of course, if you talk about markets in Kowloon City and Happy Valley, they sell very expensive produce. Mr. Raymond Chan, I'd like to refer to paragraph 14 of the speech, and that is about the Committee on Reduction of Salt and Sugar in Food. I support the reduction of salt and sugar, but then is it that you can set up a committee to tackle it? When you got the name for this committee, it was already very controversial. It's really an interesting name. And Mr. Bernard Chan said, well, that's something good, isn't it? Because it has attracted a lot of attention. It may be more effective than taking out an API. However, this is, in a way, a small matter. Why do you tackle it with a committee? And people will ask, do you have a committee on more vegetables and less meat? And also in question 208, a member asked about the expenditure for this committee, and you say it will be absorbed by existing resources. There will be seminars, there will be exchange with overseas experts, etc. And there may be some advisory committees set up, etc. And you are saying that you can absorb all the expenditure with your present allocation of resources. So maybe you really have a lot to spare. The thing is this going to be a policy of the government? Is it that you are seeing a new trend saying that if you think it is something good for the residents, so I will use it as a use a policy to do it, like you are going to charge a heavier duty on tobacco because smoking is not good for you, and you are going to do something about e-cigarettes because it's not good for you, and will you be taxing on the consumption of chocolate and car fuel, etc.? Because are you going to set up all committees on things that you think are good for the public? Raymond Chan, in fact, your last remark has already answered the question why we need a committee. I think you have cited very good examples. If you want people to consume more vegetables and less meat, yes, that is ultimately an individual's choice. Now, of course, this may be affected by other factors, but in the end, it is a kind of personal behavior and choice. You have vegetables and meat in front of you, and it's up to you to decide what to consume and how much to consume. If we want to influence that kind of behavior, we're already doing a lot of education and publicity work. As for reduction of salt and sugar, apart from it being a personal choice in that you can put less sugar, less salt when you cook at home, there is another part because we are influenced without knowing it. And we are talking about the food manufacturing industry. The soy sauce that you use at home, how much salt has been put into it, and the soft drinks you are consuming, how much sugar has been put into it. This has to do with food manufacturing. And in fact, I'm not only talking about the food manufacturing industry, but it is a very important stakeholder. That is why we cannot just rely on public education. In other countries, there are many examples and reports, and I can furnish them to you if you need to see them. They have proved that we should do it through a committee's work. And also to answer your other question, are we going to put control on people as to what they can do? And we don't want to do that. We want to do what overseas countries have done, and that is to go for voluntary persuasion. We can have a high-ranking committee which can act as a platform, because it is actually a platform to connect the food manufacturing industry with experts so that we can arrive at a consensus. The food manufacturing industry would think that if they voluntarily reduce salt and sugar, and consumers may think that the food tastes different, if not everybody in the industry does the same, then they would, those who want to do it would stand to lose because the food will not be as tasty. So we have to set up this platform to try to achieve a consensus. And if everybody puts in less sugar and salt, then we can help the public to somehow change their taste so they don't desire so much salt and sugar. Chairman, just give me one word. Would you go for a second round? The direction must be voluntary, and it must be by persuasion. Well, but then the key word is he hopes. He said he hoped that he did not have to go for legislation. I can answer that on his behalf because I have a lot of reservations about this. Secretary, right now we are not inclined to having legislation. Okay, he is not inclined. He does not rule out the possibility of legislation, said the chairman. Dr. Vincent Fang, I'd like to follow up on 005. And also para 9 of the opening remarks. This is about the keeping of livestock. In the paper, you said that whether we should go for the keeping of live poultry. You say you do not have a definite stance. You have asked a consultancy to assess the situation. And I think it is going to have a big scope vis-a-vis that consultancy.
So is it suitable for farms in Hong Kong to keep live poultry? This is the focus of the study. And also whether live poultry should be imported from the mainland. If according to the assessment both are unsuitable, then it will have a huge impact on the livelihood of practitioners in the industry. Now, my question is, have you talked to the stakeholders, or that has the report of the assessment come out? Because on reading the report, one will have an impression, and it will affect the public consultation in the future. And how much will that consultancy, how much is consultancy paid? Because last time you did a study on a central slaughtering. Now, this study covers a wide scope. How much do you estimate will be spent? And will there be in-depth study with other stakeholders? Well, back then I thought the Secretary was wasting money in conducting the study. And similarly, this time I think it's a waste of money. How much money will be wasted, Secretary? Now, something about the exchange first. All along, I have been exchanging with various stakeholders along the supply or chain of live poultry. And in the past year, we have had a number of incidents about the live poultry supply chain. And every time I made my position known to the industry, and that is, we will strive to maintain this live poultry supply chain, but there are conditions or prerequisites. It is very difficult to have zero risks of avian flu human infection if we continue to have live poultry for sale in the market. So I can only make myself clear. Whenever there is an emergency, we should join hands and together overcome the challenges. Only by doing so can we maintain the supply of live poultry in Hong Kong. My question is, how significant will the assessment outcome be to our future, and how much money will be wasted? We don't have much time. Well, both you and the Secretary still have time left. Yes, I haven't finished. As for the assessment, we have a consultant who will be communicating fully with the stakeholders before compiling the report. So let me reassure members on this. About our stage of work, we're in the stage of tendering. So at this stage, I'm afraid I cannot disclose any sum of money involved. Next, Mr. Yu Siwing. Thank you, Chairman. Reply number 077. My question is on leisure farms in Hong Kong. Now, I am not very happy with the reply because I asked for a figure, but I haven't been given one. Without a figure, we don't have a target. You have this guide to Hong Kong leisure farms, so there should be a target. Having done all these, you want to achieve something, right? But I don't see a target. And I see that for a number of years, the expenditure annually is 800,000, and that will be the expenditure for the coming year. So I have this impression that you are doing it for the sake of doing it, and you just want to tell us that you have done some promotion. But what exactly does the government have in mind as far as the future of leisure farms in Hong Kong is concerned? I don't see that in the answer. Also, I wonder if the government has any planning in this regard. Well, last week I see, Secretary, you also helped promote the leisure farms. So I see you also attach importance to the development of leisure farms, but you cannot rely on your own efforts in doing so. I see in this guide there are 127 leisure farms, and I think the capacity will be about 1,000 people. Now, I see that the expenditure for this year will more or less be the same, but are you going to find some bigger leisure farms having a greater impact on the district to sort of link the dots and plan more comprehensively so as to take on the development of leisure farms? And I see that there is also a policy for transformation of farms. And will this be the direction? After a year's preparation, I want to know a clearer direction in terms of the leisure farms development instead of not getting any answers here. Secretary: well, earlier I visited the farm, but I didn't help promote the farm. I was responding to a media organization's request to give an interview against the background of a farm. In fact, the interview was about the consultation on the new agricultural policy. Now, Mr. Yu, I understand from your perspective you may attach more importance to the development of leisure farms or agro-tourism. And in fact, under the new agricultural policy, we also have the development of leisure farms as our overall goal, but this is not the focus. The focus is that the new agri policy should be able to promote agricultural development in Hong Kong. This is our major objective. If we're able to build an agri park, and many ask whether leisure farms will be included in the agri park, and my answer is that yes, we can have leisure farms there. However, not all farms will be leisure farms. However, we can have various approaches to running farms, and I think leisure farms may be one of the feasible options. As for overall planning, we need to be careful about this. Should the government take the lead in planning for leisure farms in Hong Kong in the future? Is this suitable? Or is it that under the new agricultural policy, be it traditional farming methods or new farming methods or leisure farms, of course I agree that we should support them, but we have to ask whether the government should take over and plan how many farms there should be in the future. And for 100 or so leisure farms in Hong Kong, in terms of the quality and the quantity, they're not the same. And what we want to do is to standardize them. And of course I understand that many members of the public would like to have the farming experience there, and yet for some farms they do not have infrastructure support, and the area is actually quite small. It's actually a sandbox for children. So in the future, I think we also need to consider the quality of these leisure farms. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I hope the government would pay attention to the use of words. Animal welfare is, of course, about animals, and what we want to focus on is animal rights. So please refrain from using the word pets, because pets would give one an impression that is domesticated, and it's provided with good welfare, so we don't have to pay attention to animal welfare. And second of all, I hope that you would use the word community animals instead of stray dogs and cats, because if you say that these are stray dogs and cats, they should be left in the street and unattended. And this is really improper. For number 61, about the euthanasia of community animals. Now the expenditures continue to drop from 1.5 down to $1.4 million. Does the government have a vision similar to that of the Taiwan, so that in the end no animal would be put down, 0 animals euthanized? And do we have a timetable to eradicate euthanasia for animals so that we have healthy community animals? Now my second question is the kennel house in Kowloon City will be relocated. I'd like to know where it will be relocated to. Another question is for Ocean Park. If the chief executive is to live in an area in the Ocean Park for visitors, for visits by visitors, for exhibition, then do you agree? Secretary, on animal rights or animal welfare, I understand that well, many do advocate stronger animal rights. So are there ways to avoid putting animals down? Of course, we try to do that. One of the ways of doing so is the trap, neuter, return, TNR, and we try to do that. But I cannot say whether we have a timetable to totally stop putting down animals. Secondly, I also understand the ideology of animal rights organizations. They would like to raise the rights of animals to a level on a par with human rights, but I don't think it's easy to achieve. We need quite a lot of education effort, and I'll see if Director could give you some information in reply to your questions. Director, thank you. Chairman, thank you, Ms. Moore, for a question. Euthanasia for animal is not unique in Hong Kong. Well, Chairman, this question is answered, and I'll just leave it at that. I'd like to know about the AMC on a kennel in Song Wong Tai. Where would it be relocated? We're still trying to find a suitable location. We hope to relocate it to somewhere in Kai Tak development area or in Kowloon. And we receive over 10,000 complaints every year about community animals. About the use of terminology, because not everyone accepts the existence of such animals in the community, and it is exactly because of these complaints that we need to remove them from the community. I need to impose a stricter rule on speaking time limits because a number of members are still waiting. Dr. Priscilla Leung. I want to ask about FHB FE 143 and 144. About the rodent infestation rate. Well, we see that it's on the rise again, RIR. Now, one of the districts concerned is Kowloon City, and I hope that Secretary could respond to that, because for Kowloon City in the past, the RIR was lower than that in Mong Kok. Now, one of the reasons, according to some, is that we have the MTR project, and I also paid a visit there during Chinese New Year. And after the rains, there may be stagnant pools of water at the site, causing poor hygiene in the area.
And in Tokawan, there are so many eateries, and they have boosted up the RIR. And thirdly, I think you have failed to address this long-term problem. Take the Kowloon City and Yau Chi Mong District Councils as an example. We've always pressed for this. Some shops used to sell dry goods, but gradually they have turned to wet goods such as vegetables and fruits. As a result, the environmental hygiene in Hong Kong has deteriorated. And lastly, training within the department. A few years ago, in some Shui-Po, even the cleaning workers were not trained. For instance, they wore slippers into public markets and they had accidents, and some so-called experts should really take reference from a practice on the mainland. They have a specialty on this because of the humidity, the air condition, and the climate of Guangdong province is very similar to Hong Kong. Back then, the environmental hygiene was even worse than Hong Kong. I think we should learn from them. Secretary. I do agree with Dr. Leung. Control of rodents is actually about public hygiene. If we rely on ourselves to catch rodents, that is already the downstream of the problem. So we should do more in terms of public education and publicity. And I also agree with Dr. Leung that we can do more in training and exchange. If we do not tackle the problem at source, if all shops, all eateries are very strict in handling their food and waste, then the problem will be much lighter. If we rely on catching rodents as a solution, that's rather useless. Well, even the MTRCL, it has got projects all over Hong Kong. I inspected Kowloon West. I think the corporation has a responsibility to ensure that their works area will not have stagnant water, because that can breed mosquitoes, leading to more infectious disease, and so that applies to eateries. Mr. Michael Tian. All right, the FEHD has to incur a loss of $200 million per year in management of public markets. I've already said whether public markets should be managed by the government or by a statutory body to be set up, which will have some innovative thinking. I shared this with the Secretary previously. I'd like to talk about making savings. You said that you spend $600 million on management of public market, and for cleaners, cleansing workers, you said that depending on the number of stores, you deploy different number of cleaners. Well, in Yonggok Market, 300 stores, 40 workers. One responsible for 8 stores. Tsuen Wan, 1 to 15. Hung Chau Street, I can take you to a site visit. 1 cleaner to 30 stores. And 8 to 30 and 1 to 30. I don't know what are your criteria. You may not be able to answer me today, but as a legislator, I really want to contribute. I think you should find out how come you have this ratio, 1 cleaning worker to 30 stores. So the garbage is appalling. How can that happen? How can the ratio be as different as 1 to 30 and 1 to 8? And you do not consider the occupancy rate. Hung Chau Street, 99% occupancy rate, and 1 to 28. And Chun King Market and my constituency, you've got 12 workers deployed, so the ratio is 1 to 20, but the occupancy rate is just 20%. So, well, if I am a cleaning worker, I would certainly apply to work in Chungking Street because I am only responsible for 5 stores. And if you look at the occupancy rate, it's even more ridiculous. I don't know. But you really have to address this. I believe the patronage would not be 3-4 times more. Now, for the occupancy rate, because the management of the market is outsourced and you have an establishment, have you considered asking one contractor to look after a few markets so that there can be flexible deployment of cleaning workers? Will this help you? Secretary or the director? Director, thank you. I think Mr. Michael Tian is referring to reply 151. Because the management and cleansing services of public markets are outsourced for over 70% of the markets. The remaining are being done by the department. Because in deploying manpower, we have to consider the operation of the market. Occupancy rate is one indicator, but do you have the data I mentioned just now? Have you ever analyzed them? We look at the overall situation. Yes, there is deployment, cross-deployment of manpower. Well, your assistants should look at the overall data. For a big company, we have a framework, we have a strategy, but when there are changes, the situation is very different. And when you have a feel of the real situation, you'll find the original policy rather ridiculous. All right, it's my turn to use my 4 minutes. I may not have enough time to complete my questioning, but I must give highest commendation to the Center for Food Safety. I always disagree with my colleagues saying that our food safety problem is serious. Of course, we cannot hope that we have a 0 incident rate. Some of the sources were from overseas. We can only do our best. Secretary, since the establishment of the Center for Food Safety, many colleagues have been asking you to spend more money and resources and manpower, but you always say that you can cope by internal deployment. Of course, for food imported from Japan, there's 100% surveillance. So the number of samples rose from 50,000 odd to 60,000 odd. When there is an incident, colleagues or the community would feel that you haven't done enough sampling, or you haven't been proactive enough. Perhaps you can consider this aspect. Referring to my own question is reply 095. Now, my question is about the time taken for a license for restaurants to be licensed in 2012, 2013, 2014. The number of days taken were 106, 84, and 74 respectively. Now, it takes close to 6 months for a license to be granted. Of course, a provisional license is about 6 months. Whether the problem lies with you or the industry, I don't want to explore. And perhaps it's not entirely your problem, because the buildings department and the FSD are also involved in vetting license applications. While I praise the Center for Food Safety, I must thank your bureau for extending the term of a liquor license from 1 year to 2 years to lessen the workload of the secretariat and savings. And this results in savings and time on the part of the trade. So can you do the same for food licenses? And department, will you ask the bureau to give you more manpower resources so that the time taken for granting provisional licenses and proper licenses can be shortened. Director, you mentioned the term of a restaurant license. Usually, a license is renewed on an annual basis, and you asked whether we can extend it to 2 years. Yes, this can be considered, certainly. But if we are to do this, we will consider the track record of the restaurant concerned in the past year, as in the case of liquor licenses. The department would like to process applications for a liquor or restaurant license as expeditiously as possible. Regarding manpower, very often the backlog doesn't just lie with manpower. We can internally deploy our staff to help at peak periods. But sometimes the duration taken will depend on whether the industry or the applicant has given us sufficient information. And when the FSD or the BD has queries, if the applicant can respond quicker, then the processing time can also be shortened. All right, we'll end the session here. The next will start at 10:50.